Hey everybody, this is Jason Malott. I'm going to be preaching at you for a little bit today. It's something a little different I've been thinking about. I recently was thinking about this because of driving home a few days ago. I had saw somebody's truck. They were in front of me and they had some writing on their truck. And on one side, it said a bunch of things about Jesus, Jesus is the way and scriptures. And then on the other side, it had a bunch of political stuff. And it was very confusing to me because one side was very hateful and angry. The other side was about Jesus. And I started thinking about something, and I heard this recently. It was a quote that they attribute to the Buddha, basically that um, time is something that can only be spent. It can never be, you can't get time back. Once you spend it, it's gone. And I started thinking about how every day we allow people to steal from us. And what are they stealing from us? Well, they're stealing our peace. We have control over whether or not we allow things to get to us, to bother us, to become a thing that we want to, once again, spend our time on. Alan Watts said, it's stupid to spend your life spending your time on things that you hate. And how often do we do this? Think about what we do every day. And it's the normal, capitalist concept of, you got to work, 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 and then do all of these things just to get to some place where you think you're going to be happy, but that usually never happens. But if you think about how our society is set up, when you're a child, you go to preschool. They prepare you for something, that's going to happen in the future, which is kindergarten. And then in kindergarten, they're preparing you for grade school. And then you're going to grade school, and it's preparing you for middle school. You probably see where I'm going. So in middle school, they're preparing you for high school, and then at high school, they're preparing you for college. And then you go to college because they're preparing you for some career that you want to spend your life doing. And then you get to be in your 40s, and you're going, well, I did all of these things, but I'm still not happy, because I feel like there's something else, and I'm working, and then you work and work and work your whole life, and then when you're old and you have a bunch of aches and pains and nothing works right, and they say, oh, now you can retire and have a good time. But you're usually too old to enjoy it. It doesn't make sense. But that's the world that we live in here in America. It's wrong. It's a horrible way to live, and so many people get caught in it. And it's how we spend our time. And a lot of that, like I said, we allow things to take away our peace. We think that we need these certain things, that, Jesus said that you would always be clothed better than the flowers. You would always be fed better than the birds. You're always going to have a place. But for some people, that's not enough. Some people, they just want more. And but when you got to stop and think, when do you have enough? When is enough enough? If I just did this, I'd be happy. If I just did that. I think until we can get to the point to understand this one thing, and I want to talk to you about this today, is that peace is the decision. And if you don't decide that in the moment you are going to have peace, then you're never going to be happy, because every moment is only leading you on to the next one, to the next one, to the next thing. You don't stop and enjoy what you have right now. And you have the power to do that. So many people get so upset about so many silly things. As I've gotten older, I've noticed it's become more and more of a thing, especially with a lot of political things. People are so angry about things. They're so mad. They're so upset. And the funny thing about it is the people on the other side are also so mad and so angry and so upset. And they're each upset at each other, but really, they don't really care. They're not going to change their minds. I've learned something very important. People are who they are, and the only way they're going to change is usually something has to change on the inside. That's not going to come by force. You can, try to force somebody to think a certain way, and that's not going to change anything. You can try to inflict pain on people to try to change. That's not going to change anything. We have prison systems because it proves that, prison doesn't work. We have wars because, we think that in some way by imposing our military power that we can force people to think the way we think, and that's never worked. I think it's interesting that we went to war on terror back in 2001, and 20 years later we couldn't do anything. And the moment we leave the countries that we were supposedly trying to fix, 7 days later they went back. I don't know when people are going to figure this out. War doesn't work. Violence doesn't work. Violence is not the solution. You might disagree with me. That's fine. You might have a million reasons why you think that I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. But I can tell you this, that I learned from some very wise people, including Jesus, that violence doesn't change people. People only change when something in here changes. And that's not going to come at the end of a sword or a gun. That's not going to come because you put a certain bumper sticker on the back of your car, or you go to a rally and scream and shout and do whatever you want to do. It's going to take people's hearts changing. And that doesn't come from violence. That doesn't come from a place of violence, because violence only brings about more violence. If I was to try to beat you up, and a lot of people, it's funny because they think, oh, I'm going to fight this person because they did this. I'm mad. I'm going to jump out of my car because they cut me off and beat them up. It's like, do you really think because you might win a fight with somebody, that's the end of the fight? Because that person can come back with a knife or a gun. That person can come back at you in a lot of different ways. And you think, well, I have a gun. Okay, so their family comes at you now. Next thing you know, you have a war on your hands. There's always going to be a bigger bomb. There's always going to be a bigger weapon. Weapons are not the solution. Violence isn't the solution. None of that. And that's the thing, is that we are tricked by a violent devil, that tricks us into believing that we can impose ourselves onto people to think a certain, I'm going to teach them, and that doesn't fix anything. I've learned this in my life. I've seen, I loved back when I'm 20 years younger, I loved working out and doing all the MMA stuff and hanging out with all the people that did it and practicing the stuff. And, but the funny thing is that most people who were really, really good at fighting stayed out of fights because they were smart enough to know that with just your two hands, you could do so much, but you can't do everything. Because if somebody has a knife or a gun, I think it was Boz Rutan, I think he said, he was one of my favorite guys. He put a whole video out about how bar fighting, but at the end of the day, you can learn how to fight just as good as Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee couldn't stop a bullet. At the end of the day, all of that stuff that you think is going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The thing that you have control over, and that's what I want to talk to you about, the things that you have control over in your life. How can you keep people from stealing from you? Well, number one, you can decide to be at peace. You can decide that. It's not a feeling. It's a decision. And it's no one else's responsibility but yours. No one else. No one else has to be nice to you. Nobody has to compliment you when you're doing a good job. Nobody has to do that. And the funny thing about it is we get so angry at other humans. We never give them room to be human because they're humans. And I'm talking to both, all sides of the spectrum, all people, all ways you think, no matter where you come from. Humans are humans. They're going to make mistakes and they're going to let you down. I learned this definitely the hard way. Growing up, after I became a Christian when I was 19, 20s, 21, I was very much involved in the church. And I saw so many leaders that were supposed to be these great people fail and fall. And it let me down. It upset me. But I realized two things. Number one, you can't put your trust in people because people will always let you down. And number two, to put somebody in a place of power like that is not always a good idea. And that's why I actually, I don't really get much into this because it's not something I feel like I need to discuss too much. But when it comes to political views, I'm definitely a Christian anarchist. And look that up. You can look up Leo Tolstoy. You can look up Jacques Ellul. You can look up various people that have talked about it. I believe it's the only way. It's the only way that government can actually work. But I don't want to get into that because it's boring. I don't believe that we should be putting people in leadership over us and putting so much, stock, so much power, giving so much power to people that really they're going to let you down. They are, because they're human. No matter who they are, no matter what they've done, they will let you down. And sometimes we have to be the type of people that are big enough. That's how violence stops. Is it takes one bigger person to say, you know what, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let that go. That's what it takes. Sometimes it takes one person to be the bigger person to say, I'm just going to let it go. You have the decision to forgive. Now, something I learned from a guy, Rob Bell, he was a really good preacher, used to be a pastor. And when he put out some books to say that God loves you so much that he's going to find a way to save everyone, that just got everybody mad. Oh, it upset people so much. They were protesting anytime he would go somewhere preaching. And they were mad about that. And he said something, and coming from that situation, it has a lot of power, I feel, is he said, you have to learn to forgive and let go. And every time you do that, Your mind's going to say, but they don't deserve it. And how you respond, of course they don't deserve it. You're not forgiving for the other person. You're forgiving for yourself. Because not forgiving is like trying to kill the rat while you're drinking the rat poison. It ain't going to work. You're not going to kill the rat. And I learned that from him, and I feel like that's a very, very powerful lesson for us, because there are a lot of times in our life where we feel like that we deserve to be upset. And then, once again, going back to what I said earlier, you spend your time doing things that you hate, being upset. That's not peace. Unforgiveness is not peace. And you might think that you have, and I absolutely will agree with you 100%, because the end of that, like I said, you forgive, you let go, and then you say to your mind, of course they don't deserve it. Give yourself that. Because they don't deserve it. They don't. But that's not the point. The forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It's for you to let go. Because now you can allow God, now I'm bringing Jesus into this here. When you forgive and you let go, now God can deal with them. And God will deal with them a lot better than you can. I like how Paul says it. He goes, leave all the wrath for God. He can definitely handle himself when it comes to those things. You don't need to get in the middle of that. That's why he says not to judge. It's not your place to judge other people. That's between them and God. You know what your place is? To pray. Jesus said, pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you. Love your enemies and pray for them. That's your job. Your job's to pray. Your job's to forgive. You know, when the great teaching on faith in Mark 11, 23, 24, 25, you read there, not only is he talking about you can have faith that you can move a mountain. If you say to this mountain, be removed and cast in the sea, and you don't doubt in your heart, but you believe it'll happen, it will happen. But then he ends with, and when you stand praying, forgive. If you have aught against anyone, if there's any problems that you have with anyone, forgive them. Forgive them. Forgive. Of course they don't deserve it. Of course they don't deserve it. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you. How are you going to spend your time? You spend your time in unforgiveness? Another thing, don't be so easily offended. Yes, people think differently than you. So what? So what? I'm not a Family Guy person anymore. I mean, I used to like it back in the day, but I don't know. It's gotten boring to me as the years went on. But I don't even know what type of person I am. I mean, I've liked Always Sunny. I've liked Family Guy. I've even tried South Park. You know, I mean, they're all really interesting shows. But there was one Family Guy where it was a Christmas special where Peter got up and talked about the meaning of Christmas was the ghost of baby Jesus rises from the dead, and this whole funny thing. And there was a Christian in the crowd, and he's like, I'm mad. He goes, but I'm gonna learn to let it go. It's like sometimes people are gonna say things that might offend you. So what? Let it go. It doesn't mean anything. Allow people to be human, because they're gonna be human. Don't be so easily offended. Your happiness is not other people's responsibility either. You can be happy or you don't have to be happy. It's up to you. I want to read this to you. This is Jesus said this in John chapter 16. Verse 33, he just got finished telling some of the most amazing things. You got to read John 14, 15, 16, all the way through, and you're going to see all the things that he just got finished talking about. They were amazing. They were awesome. And I don't even have time to go into it because I want to keep this video at 20 minutes. But in verse 33, he says, that these things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world, you'll have trouble, but take courage. I have overcome the world. Think about that. There's two different, you can be in the world or in Jesus. Now, what he's talking about in the world, he's talking about, of course, the world is going to be the way it is because humans are humans. The devil is the devil. Things happen. Bad things happen. It sucks. It's horrible. People are going to be people. They're going to do stupid things. But your response to it is up to you. He says, he's told you all these things. Like what? Like ask for anything in my name, I'll do it. That's one of the things he says in this passage of scriptures. And he spoke these things to you so that you may have peace. You can have peace. In the world, yes, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be problems. But remember, Jesus overcame the world. There is nothing in the world too big for Jesus. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, there's this other really cool passage of scripture. This is in Luke chapter 10. Here's a good example of what I'm talking about here. Jesus goes out preaching. All these amazing things happen. He tells a story about the Good Samaritan. I know you probably heard the story before about, who was really the good neighbor. And Mary and Martha, a lot of people say they're the sisters of Lazarus. I don't know, but basically they have a home and they invite Jesus over. And he's in the house doing a little, in-home Bible study with a group of people. And Martha's trying to prepare things and make make the food and make everything nice for him. And she's getting mad because her sister Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. And she's like, Jesus, you need to tell Mary to go help me. She's not paying, she's not doing the things I want her to do. And I think it's funny that when you get outside of peace, you start feeling like you can tell Jesus what to do. I just think it's amazing that here Martha felt like she could tell Jesus what to do. And Jesus is like, Martha, you're troubled about so many things. And I like this scripture right here. Verse 42, there are a few things necessary, really only one. And Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. You know what the important part was? Sitting at Jesus' feet. That was the important part. The important part was sitting at Jesus' feet. Not the scrambling around, trying to fix the food, trying to do all that stuff. No, the important part was what Mary chose. And what Mary chose was to sit at Jesus' feet. You see, if Martha would have just calmed down for a second, she might have remembered that Jesus just fed 5,000 people with a couple loaves and fishes. He didn't need Martha to prepare anything. He could have just been like, all right, here you go, here's some food. He didn't need Martha to prepare anything. We think it's so important that we do all these different things. In our, like I said, capitalist minds, we think, I've got to work, I got to do this, I got to do that. Do you really have to do it that way? Is there maybe a better way? Maybe sitting at the feet of Jesus, he might be able to share with you the right way to do it. I have found that when I choose the Mary way, sitting at Jesus' feet, I can keep my peace, and I don't allow the troubles of this world to get to me. I don't allow the things around me to keep me away from what God really wants for me. And guess what? It's always a lot better than what I can do. I guarantee you the 5,000 people out in the desert in the middle of nowhere ate the most amazing meal when Jesus fed the 5,000, it was way better than what Martha can do. Way better than what Martha can do. So, that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about today. Just think about this. You have the power to allow people to steal your peace. You don't have to. You don't have to let people do that. You have the power to choose. You can allow people to steal your peace, or you can say, you know what? I'm going to forgive. I'm going to let go. I'm not going to let that bother me. I'm not going to let that offend me. And I'm going to pray for that person. If it really bothers you, pray for them. Pray for whatever it is you think that's such a horrible thing that these people had done, or said or whatever. If it really is that bad, pray for them, because that's going to make a bigger difference. Being upset is your choice. You don't have to. And like I said earlier, Alan Watts asked the question, why would you spend your time doing things you hate? You don't have to. And like I said, Buddha said, you only got a certain amount of time. Once you spend it, it's spent. You don't get it back. You can't ask for more. It is what it is. So what are you going to do with it? How are you going to spend your time? Being upset or being at peace? Thanks for listening to me.